It's the Vancouver Hockey Show, back once again after a bit of a hiatus. Andrew Wadden alongside Jake Fraser, one half of the Healthy Scratches. Our boy Nick Halka doing some good work out in Kamloops right now with the BC Lions. Before we dive into everything that we've missed over almost a month here, Jake, we've got to acknowledge our sponsor, Hideout Golf, down at the Best Western Sands Hotel, where it never rains. If you love golf simulation, come down and check us out at Hideout Golf, 1755 Davie Street. You dial in your game before you get out on the course. All right, let's dial in the Vancouver Canucks, though, because there's been a lot to get to since we last spoke to the audience. And we'll start right with Rick Tocchet, who is now a Philadelphia Flyer once again, the head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers, as he took that job that many thought he was coveting. And I think the thing that really stands out to me, Jake, is not the fact that like he left to go to Philadelphia, because when you sort of align that stuff, it kind of makes sense, knowing his history. But really what stands out the most to me was that he was handpicked by this regime. Like, they brought him over. They've obviously had a relationship with him from their days in Pittsburgh together, but they also made him an offer, and apparently a significant offer. And Rick Tocchet said, thanks guys, but no thanks. I'm going to head back to my old stomping grounds. And when you think about really that first year with the Canucks, or I guess it was the first full year with the Canucks, when he won the Jack Adams, and the Canucks did so much good stuff, being able to make it into the second round of the postseason. And then just to see what happened last year, I mean, can you really blame him for wanting to just get a fresh start? And especially in a place that he's very familiar with.
Yeah, no, you definitely can't blame him. I think Philadelphia they're in a better situation than the Vancouver Canucks are right now. I think they've got some good pieces there, some pieces that play that Tocchet hockey, you know, Travis Konechny, Sean Couturier, Travis Sanheim. Like, they've got those pieces. And so you look at what happened here in Vancouver. Obviously, he had mentioned practice facility being an issue too. He talked about that in his press conference with the Flyers, saying that he was super happy to see, I'm paraphrasing, but super happy to see this really beautiful practice facility they've got there. So I just think going back to an organization that he's very familiar with and getting, like you said, that fresh start, I just think it's a better option for him, and it doesn't surprise me at all. But at the same time, I am a bit sad to see him go, just because I'm not sure Adam Foote is necessarily the right guy for the job.
I want to get to Foote in a second, because I think there's a lot of question marks around Foote, and I think there's maybe a little degree of bad PR when it comes to, you know, making him the head coach. But we'll get to that in just a second, because you said something really interesting there. You know, better situation, Philadelphia over Vancouver. I mean, some Canuck fans might bristle when you say that and go, what are you talking about? But when you look at the dysfunction that happened around the Vancouver Canucks this season alone, and the question marks that still sort of surround this team, like, what is Elias Pettersson? You know, what's he going to be moving forward? Is he going to be, you know, like a Jonathan Huberdeau 2.0? And I know Huberdeau had a bounce back season to a certain degree this year with Calgary, but he wasn't putting up 115 points like he did with the Cats there. You know, what's the future of Quinn Hughes? Where is Thatcher Demko going to be? So, you know, as you sort of break that down, you know, I think there's some truth in what you're saying in terms of being a better situation in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and he did say that he expects Pettersson to have a bounce back year, but you can't guarantee that. And I think the biggest thing is, and we're going to get into this too, attracting free agents to come here is how you're going to get success out of Pettersson. You've got to surround him with elite level talent, which the Canucks just don't have on their roster as of today. And so, you know, it's going to be tough to bring in that elite talent through free agency. Maybe you can do it through the trade market, but we've seen the prices of some of these, like even middle six guys at the trade deadline this year. It was really high. So you maybe have enough assets to bring in one, maybe two top six forwards to play alongside Pettersson. And then, yeah, Quinn Hughes, that's so up in the air right now. I'm not sure what is going to happen there, but that's another player that you've got to bring in elite talent, and you've got to surround him with a team that can contend in the next 2 years before his contract is up.
Yeah. Lots in the blender. You can probably hear the blender behind me right now, thanks to my girlfriend. She's making herself a smoothie. But regardless, the Canucks are going to have to put themselves into a blender right now and figure out exactly what this roster is going to be. And now the guy at top is going to be Adam Foote. And, Rick Tocchet talked about, telling Adam that, he needs to have a daily plan for Elias Pettersson, which I find to be very interesting, that you have to coddle a player to be able to, basically do his work. I found those comments to be really bizarre, especially since, he put close to 90 million or over 90 million, whatever it was, in the guy's genes already. I feel like you shouldn't have to be able to do that. That should be a prerequisite for the job. So I found that comment to be really interesting. But Hughes is kind of the key right here because of his relationship with Adam Foote. The one thing I do wonder, though, and the NHL, when it comes to, sort of glossing over things like, sexual assault, it's kind of common. Like it's sort of something that's happened many times over the years. And it's to me, a stain on the reputation of the NHL. And the reason why I bring that up is because, of course, Cal Foote, Adam Foote's son, is now on trial right now for the alleged sexual assault that happened with the World Junior team back, was it 2018, I believe, or 2017, one or the other. But, and I don't want to just gloss over that, but my point is this, is that, like, did the Canucks even consider the PR that could be surrounding this, especially if Cal Foote is found guilty, and the repercussions that's going to happen for him and those other players?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's such a tough situation, just because obviously Adam himself is not necessarily directly involved in all of that. But I mean, it's certainly a bad look that your son that you raised and taught along the way is involved in something terrible like this, right? So yeah, I wonder if they did. The Canucks seem to, with their PR team, they seem to be reactive rather than proactive. And so I do kind of doubt that they considered this and or maybe considered it and thought, well, we can make it go away fairly quickly and it won't be that big of an issue. Like, I don't know. They just don't, they aren't the most proactive PR team in the NHL by any means.
And a lot of that comes from the top, right? I mean, I know that the Aquilini family takes a lot of shots, or people take a lot of shots at them, and rightfully so from time to time. But, I know that they opened up the wallet for Rick Tocchet, but I don't think the same can be said for Adam Foote, because I don't think Adam Foote can sort of demand that sort of salary as well. And then I know there was rumors about Manny Malhotra being in the mix. Like, do you feel like the Canucks kind of cheaped out here to a certain degree? I know Foote already had the relationship with Hughes. And again, as I mentioned earlier, that is key here, because they want to do everything they can to make sure that Quinn Hughes is comfortable and, hopefully don't lose him to free agency or, have to consider trading him. But, like, was Foote the right pick to lead this team? And where is this team sort of going right now? Because, as mentioned, 2 years ago, they're, just out of the playoffs at this time of the year, making this run. This whole city's like, oh, this team's amazing. All these people are picking them to win the Pacific. And then we see how last season went. So like, where is this team now? And is Foote the right guy to sort of lead them to where they want to go next?
I will say, the thing that I do like about the Adam Foote hiring is that they're not just going through this recycling of head coaches throughout the NHL. They didn't just bring a guy in who got fired from another NHL job. I like the idea of bringing a new guy in. I think Adam Foote could have some success as long as, a coach is only as good as the team that's in front of them, but you also need to surround him with some more experienced and good assistant coaches. I think with the lack of experience that Adam Foote has, you need to bring in maybe a guy who gets passed over for a head coaching job and just wants a couple years as an assistant coach just to get back into the mix of becoming a head coach again in the NHL. If you can bring in a guy like that on your bench to be the assistant coach, preferably someone to manage the forward group, I think he can have some success. But I think if you just kind of maintain like this inexperienced coaching group, I don't see it being a great fit for the team that they have right now.
Do you think Malhotra would be a good addition to that on that bench, or do you think maybe he needs to, like, another year of being the top guy, with the AHL franchise?
I was thinking about that a little bit. I I think I would keep him in the AHL.
Yeah.
I think he's a great asset to have down there. He's obviously developed a lot of, or, well, maybe not a lot, but he's had a lot of good results with the players that have played in Abbotsford this year. They've come up into the NHL, they've been prepared, and they've played well. So I think you keep him there, and he can keep developing your younger guys through Abbotsford. And yeah, I mean, if things don't work out with Adam Foote, I think the first guy that I'd be calling, assuming that Malhotra maintains success, I'd be hiring him for that job.
Yeah, I really thought I was going to be super smart, and when I said that Mike Sullivan was going to be, because I called that on a pod a while ago, and then clearly I was wrong with that one. He wanted to stay out east, and who could blame him, really? When you play in that sort of New York, Philadelphia sort of area, like in the metropolitan, like it's pretty easy travel as well. When you play in Vancouver, you know, obviously have some of the worst travel in the NHL, so I could probably see why Mike Sullivan would want to do that. And also too, I think there's a lot of people that are looking at what happened over the last year, going, "Nah, I'm good. I don't want to touch that." Right. So, speaking of what happened last year, this sort of pivots onto our next point here when we're talking about free agency with the Vancouver Canucks. Now we're going to dive deeper into free agency, but let's let these playoffs sort of roll out, and then we'll sort of dive into that once the sort of official off season starts. But Elliot Friedman on with Donnie and Dolly today, and Rick Dollywall tweeted this out. Elliot Friedman on top free agents don't want to sign in Vancouver, and this is Elliot's words. No doubt what happened this season has hurt their standing around the league. Also, the Quinn Hughes uncertainty. If you're signing long term in Van, you probably want to know about Hughes's future. That's a pretty spicy meatball there from, you know, perhaps the biggest insider in the NHL, at least one of them. And, you know, the fact that we've already sort of been set up by Jim Rutherford in his comments, about a month back. I keep telling people that I think they're trading them this summer. Like, I think they're pulling the Band-Aid off. They're going to have a ton of value if they sell them this summer, you know, with next year and the year after that, still on that very good contract of his. I mean, he's over a $10 million player, no doubt nowadays, making just under 8. Like, so I think if you move him now, you'd have a ton of, you'd be able to get a ton of suitors, but also you would be able to maximize sort of the value that you could get from Quinn Hughes. And obviously, you know, you have New Jersey sort of circled, and they have a lot of pieces that could come back this way. Like, it just seems like the timing might be right to do it if you are going to do it. And listen, if Quinn Hughes is like, no, guys, like, I'm going to sign an 8-year deal. I'm going to be the captain of this team, and I'm going to, you know, have the majority of my career here. If that is the case, and they knew that from Hughes, then okay, all bets are off. But if there is some uncertainty right now, I think it's best to be, and you talked about them not being proactive, I think it's best to be proactive right now. And I know that would be a tough pill to swallow, and you would be losing that deal because you know, the best player would be going to wherever he goes. But if you could get 2 to 3 pieces, maybe some draft picks, like, you might be able to accelerate whatever the hell this is that the Canucks are in right now.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, if they were to move Hughes, that would be the best course of action if you are uncertain about him resigning. But at the same time, like, I just can't see them ever doing it. They're, especially like you talked about with the Adam Foote hiring, like they made that hiring. They said they didn't consult Quinn Hughes, but they knew the relationship there. So I think they're going to hang on to him and do everything they can to re-sign him. And, you know, hopefully they can bring in other pieces that make this team more of a playoff contender, more of a Stanley Cup contender. And, you know, he wants to stay here. This team is not going to be the same without Quinn Hughes. He's probably solidified himself already. If not, he will solidify himself in the next year or two as the greatest Canuck to put on the jersey.
Yes.
So I just don't think they are going to let that go for a couple extra pieces.
If you had to give a percentage on him signing with the Canucks and, you know, basically putting another 8 years down with the Canucks, like, what would you do with it? Where would you, is it a 50-50 right now?
I would say it's a little below 50 right now. I'd put him at 40%, I would say.
Wow. I mean, that's scary, but listen, if you are a, you know, not wearing rose-colored lenses Canucks fan, you have to understand that there is a very good chance that Quinn might say, check please, and just be like, no, I want to, go play with my brothers. And too, like, the one thing I think a lot of fans don't really, not that they don't understand this, but like, these are human beings at the end of the day. And I know this is big business stuff, but like, if you're Quinn Hughes and you see your two brothers are already drafted by the same franchise, you just need to be the third piece there. And you go, hey, like, wow, like, this is all aligned. Like, and it's my life, it's my hockey career. Like, I want to do this. Like, so you really couldn't blame him. And Canuck fans will, don't get me wrong. If he does leave, he'll probably get booed every time he comes here and whatnot. But I mean, again, the human side of things, I could see him doing it. And honestly, it might be a good thing for the Canucks where they're at right now. I know, again, like I said, that's a tough pill to swallow, tough thing to hear. But just with everything that's happened over the last year or so, they definitely need a freshening up, and maybe that can come with moving 43. How about Connor Garland, though? Him and Drew O'Connor both represented for the USA at the IIHF World Championship. By the way, like, do you watch it? Because I do every year. Like, I actually really like the tournament. And now we didn't like it for Canada this year. Obviously, we're disappointed being Canadians, especially with that team that they brought out there. But you get wild shit like Denmark upsetting Canada. And like, that game was crazy, And the one thing that I do love about the tournament is, those players, they're over there, they're playing, but they're having a good time too. Right? Like, they're flooring it when they go there. And then, a lot of the guys will end up, getting serious once those prelims stop. But Canada just cruised their way through the prelims. And then I wonder if they were, taking it deep the night before and perhaps, underestimating Denmark, because, man, the Danes came through and they pulled off an incredible victory. But, kudos to the USA and Connor Garland and Drew O'Connor for winning gold there with USA.
Yeah, I do watch the tournament just a little bit. Like, I'm not keeping a close eye watching every single game, even every single Canadian game. I watch when I can. The thing that kind of sucks about these international tournaments is when they're over in Sweden, like it was this year, like sometimes you got a 6 a.m. game, and I'm not going to bother waking up for that unless it's the Olympics.
No.
So,
no, I mean, I totally agree with you. But like, once it gets into, like, when they're playing Sweden or they're playing Finland, like, in those games are definitely intriguing. But I bring up Connor Garland too, because, obviously Drew O'Connor was a big piece of that USA victory as well. But man, Connor Garland was one of their better players. 10 points in the tournament, 5 goals, 5 assists. And just looking at the Canucks salary cap this year, like, he's UFA after this coming season. Now, he makes just a shade under $5 million, and that might be, a little pricey for Connor Garland, but with the cap going up and whatnot, and, maybe that sort of falls into place a little bit better for some teams. But I wonder what his future is with the Vancouver Canucks, because he can hold his head high. Like, he had a good season this year. He was one of the guys that, came through all that bullshit and was able to, still play his game. And in fact, one of his better seasons of his career. But like, at 29 years old, are you going to give him another contract? Because, he's going to want to at least a 5+ years. He's not going to sign for 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah, I think Connor Garland's a very good middle six forward. You'd ideally like him on your third line, but he can come up onto your second line. This year, he was maybe it's an argument between him, DeBrusk, and Besser for who was the best winger, and it's close on all three, I'd say. And for most consistent, he was the most consistent player all year. So I think just based on his contract right now, you're going into the last year of the deal. I think it makes sense to move him this summer. You want to bring in a piece that can play legit top 6 minutes every single night, is more of a top 6 guy. You add Connor Garland to a trade with, say, a first round pick, you can bring in that legit top 6 winger, right? So I don't know if I see him re-signing here either. I think he was a big talk-it guy as well. So yeah, I would maximize the value you can get out of him this offseason and try and bring in another legit top 6 winger as a replacement.
And you think pairing that with like a first round pick as well? Because the Canucks do have their first round pick, or at least for the next 3 years, as I look here on Puckpedia. It's, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not this year that everybody's salivating about, right? It's next year.
Yeah, 2026 draft.
Is that the McKenna, or are we still a year out from that?
That's the Gavin McKenna draft,
okay.
yeah.
Right on. Well, kudos to Connor Garland for winning gold, and of course Drew O'Connor as well. We'll see what the future holds for Garland, and I tend to agree with you. I don't know if it'll be this summer, but he'll be gone definitely if he makes it to the trade deadline next year for the Canucks. Marcus Pettersson wins bronze as part of the Swedish team, but he's not the Pettersson that I really want to talk about in here. Like, where was Elias? Why was Elias not representing Sweden? And some people are going to say, well, he was injured, but I mean, look at Willie Nylander. Like, he gets bounced from the playoffs in what was a heartbreak for Elias, as they looked like they were in control of that series against Florida, at least early on. And then, of course, the wheels fell off in true Leaf fashion. But Willie ran all the way there and represented his country. And you can't tell me he wasn't banged up as well, right? Playing all that hockey. Like, I just wonder where Elias Pettersson's head's at when it comes to hockey right now. Like, and you know, can you blame him for maybe wanting to get away from things? Probably not. But at the same time, too, like, I feel like, you know, someone like him really could have, you know, got something out of going out there and representing for his country and, you know, sort of maybe proven people that, hey, like, I still got this, you know, and I'm gonna show you again next year.
Yeah, and especially with it being in his home country too,
Yeah.
right? Like the tournament's in Stockholm, which is where he's training this offseason. It would make a lot of sense for him to be there. I mean, you talked about Nylander coming through. We talked about the Denmark team. Nikolai Ehlers hopped off a plane, scored the game-tying goal against Germany, which put them in that quarterfinal. Like, these guys, I mean, even Canada, they had Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon. Like, it was not the usual, like, oh, it's just a bunch of fourth line, third line guys or younger players that want to get some extra development. There was a lot of legit NHLers in this year's tournament, and this was a perfect opportunity for Pettersson to go play with a guy like William Nylander again and play with some of those elite level talents and just kind of get into a groove going into the off-season training and everything. Yeah, I think he should have been there, but at the same time, like you said, you can't blame him. He probably wants to take a step back from games and really, I mean, management has harped on this for the last couple months that he's got to be in better shape come the start of the season. And so he's just getting an early head start on that off-season training to be in the best shape possible.
I find that to be so bizarre. Like, you know what I mean? We're going to give this guy 11.5 million a year, but we got to coax him to get into better shape. Like, what are we even talking about here? I wonder too if the scrutiny, you know, of being in Sweden and, you know, represented, because, you know, that gets gold or buzz for them, right? And they're not pleased with the bronze. I'm sure they're okay with it. I mean, Canada's obviously not happy, but, you know, if you sort of look back at it on a Canadian perspective, like, you know, we win a lot in Canadian hockey, and to have, I mean, Denmark's going to be talking about that win for years, right? So, but yeah, I just feel like with Petey that I think he could have got something out of that. Maybe, you know, sort of, maybe even have found his love again for the game. Because I wonder where that's at right now with him after the season that he had, and the fact that, like, he was just put under such a microscope and he was just scrutinized so much by the fans out here, and he's taken a lot of shrapnel with the whole JT Miller situation. I wonder if it would have been best for Petey to suit up for Sweden. He didn't suit up in the Stanley Cup playoffs. That's where we'll go next. And again, we haven't had a chance to talk about the playoffs at all. They were just starting when we did our last pod. So I don't really want to rehash the entire thing, because I'm sure the listener has been involved, or at least been following along with the Stanley Cup playoffs. But, like, what surprised you the most in this postseason? Because it looks like we're on the track of having a rematch of last year. Does that surprise you? Because, you know, like, Dallas is getting sort of manhandled right now by the Oilers. And I know they took the first game, but, like, the Oilers sort of blew the first game as opposed to Dallas really winning it.
Yeah, I am surprised by honestly, I'm surprised by the fact that Dallas is playing as poorly as they are. This isn't the same Dallas team that lost the Oilers last year. They added Mikko Rantanen, a top 5 player in the league. Like, I'm shocked that they haven't been able to do more damage to the Oilers, especially with Stuart Skinner in net, who was terrible leading into this series. Like, yeah, I'm shocked by that result. And just, I mean, some of the series have just been kind of duds for me too. There haven't been that many really exciting matchups this year. I was really excited for Panthers Lightning in the first round, and that series was just kind of a flop. Um, Edmonton Vegas, I thought there would be like a big rivalry there, and that would be a fun, entertaining series. And same kind of thing. Like, I don't know. I was hoping for something different this year's playoffs, but maybe it's the fact that the Canucks aren't in it this year, just won't feel the same as it did last year. But yeah, it just hasn't been the same to me.
What about from a Canadian team's perspective? Because there were a lot of people, especially when the Leafs went up 2-0 on the Cats there, they're like, whoa, boy, like Oilers Leafs Stanley Cup final. And, there's definitely people that were starting to try to make that a line. But, like, let's not forget, like, the President's Trophy was won by the Winnipeg Jets this year. And I don't know about you, like, they're turning into, like, the Leafs West. Right? They just have these incredible regular seasons. They've got all this talent. They got, the Hart Trophy winner, what we speculate will be the Hart Trophy and Vezina Trophy winner, and Connor Hellebuck, who becomes Jekyll and Hyde when it comes to the playoffs. I mean, we talk about Stuart Skinner. Well, Skinner, you either get one or the other. You either get an absolute dud or he shuts you out. There's no in between with him, right? But I think with the talent that's sort of in front of him, being the two best players in the world, and McDavid and Draisaitl, like they step up, right? But with the Jets, it's like, man, they have this balanced approach. They're almost built kind of like Florida in terms of like you can roll four lines with them, but at the same time too, and then comes to postseason, they just can't seem to get it done. Now we could talk about the Leafs, but like you kind of expect it from them, right? But it's getting to that point now with Winnipeg where it's like, can these guys ever get over the hump here?
Yeah, I just don't think they have that like star like a McDavid, a Rantanen, a Kachuk that can take over a game when you need them to. Like, I mean, they've obviously got a very deep team. They've got good decor. They've got the best goalie in the league, but they just don't have that like number one legit player, kind of like the Carolina Hurricanes in my eyes. Like they're another team. They make it to the Eastern Conference Finals and they just don't have that guy that can help them take over a game. Obviously, they're another really deep team with a great decor. Goaltending is a lot worse than Winnipeg, but it's not that bad either, right? So, yeah, I think if you want to win a Stanley Cup, you need at least one guy that can be a difference maker, and then you also need the depth on top of that.
Well, the Hurricanes did have him, but they ended up trading him. They
Yeah.
traded for him, and then they traded him away. And Mikko Rantanen. Before we put a bow on it, then let's just tie this all back to the Canucks then when it comes to this postseason. Like what you've seen from this year's Stanley Cup playoffs, and Oilers are deeper this year. They are. In fact, I think they have a really good chance of winning the Stanley Cup. I think if there's any team that could take the Panthers, it could be the Oilers. We'll see how that plays out. But as you look at the Oilers, and I know they're not through yet, and nor is Florida as we record this, but it does look like they are going to meet again. Like, so how far away are the Canucks in these? Because like, look at the Canucks goaltending. It's solid. Look at the Canucks blue line. It's solid. It's just in that forward group. But you talk about having to have that elite player. Like, do they have that with Elias Pettersson? Because it feels like they kind of had that guy in JT Miller. Like JT Miller, and I've said this on the pod before, like you win with players like JT Miller. And I know that people go, oh, they didn't win last year against the Oilers. Sure. They just ran out of gas against the Oilers. But you need a guy that leads you into the fight. And that is a JT Miller type. You talk about Matt Kachuk. He's like that. His brother Brady's like that, right? And that's something that the Leafs are lacking as well. Their best player, Austin Matthews, he doesn't really bring you to the fight. You talk about Winnipeg. It's like, do you think that player could be Elias Pettersson? Or more importantly, do you think that player is Quinn Hughes?
Well, I definitely think that player is Quinn Hughes. You'd like to have two, and I think Elias Pettersson could be that guy if he takes some big steps during the offseason. And I think like I was saying earlier, you've got to surround him with the talent. But yeah, that guy would have to be Quinn Hughes. Now, the problem that I have with Quinn Hughes being that guy is like we saw in the playoffs last year, he's getting targeted. Their teams are going to make late hits on him. They're going to send their biggest hitters like the Nashville Predators did with Kiefer Sherwood, and they're just going to try and bully Quinn Hughes, which became a problem. Like, he started to slow down a little bit because he was getting banged up. He's a smaller guy, and that's just going to happen. So you definitely need to bring in another forward that can be just kind of like a Tkachuk. Obviously, you're not going to go out and get a Tkachuk, but you want to bring in a winger that can play with Elias Pettersson, that can score, play, make, but most importantly, can take the hits, make the hits, and be kind of like that big power forward on Petey's line.
Well, you might be able to bring in one of the Tkachuks. Might be able to pull Brady out of Ottawa.
I don't know if Brady would want to come to another Canadian market.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. All right. We can do speculation talk on the next podcast, because there's going to be a lot of it. Because, of course, the draft's going to be coming up, free agency, the trade protection kicking in for Elias Pettersson. Could we perhaps see a Pettersson trade at the draft or around the draft? I mean, there's going to be a lot, I think, that's going to be coming up on the plate for Canucks fans, and we'll dive into all of it. Maybe not on the next pod, but on the pods throughout the offseason as we track towards July 1st. All right, good stuff, Jake. Thanks for doing this today. And, of course, shout out to our boy Nick Hauka, doing some great work out there in Kamloops with the BC Lions. For Jake Fraser, I'm Andrew Wadden. It's been another edition of the Vancouver Hockey Show. Thanks for listening, everyone.